Good morning. How's everybody doing?
Good morning.
My name is Lauren Hersh. I'm the National Director of World Without Exploitation, our national coalition to combat human trafficking and sexual exploitation. Before we begin, I want to make sure that we say a huge thank you to Senator Portman and his extraordinary team. Their deep passion for ending online exploitation has translated into tireless and impactful work and a really, really phenomenal piece of legislation that we're eager to pass. We want to thank Senator Portman for co-sponsoring this event. We want to thank you, Senator Blumenthal and Senator McCaskill, for your extraordinary work on this really important issue. When we decided that we were going to come to DC on January 11th, Human Trafficking Awareness Day, the response was extraordinary. Survivors were activated immediately, and the reality is, survivors have been leading the charge to pass SESTA from the very, very beginning. In this room, we have leaders from Ohio, from Missouri, and from Connecticut. We have folks from California, Colorado, Minnesota, Missouri, and many, many more. On the other side of the country, we have many people who said, we want to be here, but we can't fly across the country, but we're going to come anyway. And so they gathered together in different places in Seattle, in Ohio, in New Jersey, and they're having viewing parties of this briefing right now. Around the country, there is a very, very loud chorus calling for change. The ask is simple: pass SESTA. Now, for me, this journey started actually 6 years ago. I was a New York City prosecutor at the time, and I received a call very late at night. A young girl was being pulled out of a trafficking situation. I threw on some clothes, hopped in a taxi, and went straight to the hospital. When I met this young girl, we'll call her Ani, at the hospital, she was being treated for an array of sexually transmitted diseases, and the bruises all over her body ranged from fresh and new to faded and forgotten. Now, each time the nurse came in and went to issue her an injection, she started wailing and crying and screaming, the way that many of you might actually see with your own children. And this moment made me think that although this kid had experienced more trauma than any adult should experience in a lifetime, she was just that. She was a child. She was a little girl. For the next several days, I unpacked her case. Her story was the all too common story that we hear so often about rape, brutal beatings, coercion, and horrific exploitation. And in building my case against Ani's trafficker, I spent hours scrolling on a website that 6 years ago I didn't know well. The website was Backpage.com. I was stunned as I was staring at the computer screen, thousands of ads scrolling down, watching woman after woman, girl after girl who was being sold on this website. The year was 2012. Right around this time, there was a very abrupt shift that was happening. And the shift that was happening was that women and girls who were at one point being sold on the streets were now being sold online. Literally overnight, every girl that I worked with was being sold online. Pimps were posting these women like products and buyers were buying these women and girls from the comfort of their living room. And these websites were making millions. For Ani and the countless others, the website served as a gateway to brutal beatings and repeated rapes. And for the websites that profited, they were making millions of dollars off of the backs of exploited people. I remember thinking to myself at the time, this is the biggest racket going, and we need to do something about it. And this was in 2012, before any of us had uttered the words Twitter or Instagram. Well, friends, I can say with certainty that for the last 6 years, this situation has not gotten better. It's gotten worse. Today, most of the $99 billion sex trade relies on the internet to recruit and sell people. Between 2010 and 2015, reports of online sex trafficking has increased by 800%. Let that sink in. These websites are making millions for their role in criminal conduct, and it's all just legal. The current US law is basically a get-out-of-jail-free card for websites that sell and profit from exploitation. How is this possible? Because of an archaic law that was crafted at a time when the dial-up internet took you 10 minutes just to get on it. Remember those days? Well, 22 years later, it's time for a change. It's time to close the legal loophole that allows websites to skirt accountability for knowingly facilitating sex trafficking. It is time to give survivors the recourse that they deserve. It's time to stop putting profit over people. And it's time to create a world without exploitation. And so we collectively are here today to call on Congress to pass SESTA. Is Senator Portman in Okay. Senator Portman, can we hold you for 1 minute and roll the PSA? So we have a very exciting PSA that Mary Mazzio put together with Sanctuary for Families and World Without Exploitation. And it features Seth Meyers, Amy Schumer, Malak Rock, who's here with us, Josh Charles, for you football fans, DeBrickashaw Ferguson, and many others. And without further ado, here we go.
I know right now you feel like you're watching a PSA and you're like, another PSA with people saying things monotone, looking sad into the camera, but this is actually really, really messed up. Today, you can go online and buy a child for sex. It's as easy as ordering a pizza.
It is inconceivable to me that this is happening here in this country.
Thousands of children are raped every day.
I was not aware.
I had no idea.
I'm totally shocked and flabbergasted.
It's all just a click away.
It's happening on the hour.
By the hour.
24/7.
24/7.
24/7.
This is a crisis.
It happens in every town and every city across America.
Even your city.
They call it sex trafficking, which is a sanitized term for serial rape.
It is slavery, and
This is really scary.
It's barbaric.
It's outrageous.
It's horrifying.
And the websites where they're advertised, they make millions and millions of dollars every year. It's all about the money.
and they're allowed to advertise it online because of a stupid loophole, so it's legal.
It's legal.
It can no longer be legal to advertise children for sex, period.
This is the dark side of technology.
It's unacceptable.
It's a human rights issue.
What if this was your daughter? What if this was your son? It's up to us to stop it.
This cannot continue.
These girls have dreams, and they want so much more.
Survivors who sometimes call themselves Jane Doe are now fighting back.
Fighting to change this law.
And we need to stand with them.
Listen to survivors.
Listen to survivors.
Listen to survivors.
To survivors.
The law should be changed so that children are protected with the same vigor that the websites are protected.
Let's do something now.
These websites must be held accountable.
Please help.
We must stand together to fight this.
Call your congressperson or senator and say, what the
Ask them to amend Section 230.
and then call them again until they do something.
Please call yours.
Will you call yours? It could have been me.
It could have been me.
I am Jane Doe.
I am Jane Doe.
I am Jane Doe.
I am Jane Doe.
Several years ago, when a number of survivors could not get justice in the courtroom, these 3 senators came together and said, we are going to create a legislative fix. We are so immensely grateful for your leadership, Senator Portman, Senator Blumenthal, and Senator McCaskill. And now it's my great honor to introduce to you SESTA's greatest champion, Senator Portman.
Okay, here's the truth. It's the survivors in this room today who have gotten us to this point. So I'm happy to stand today with Kubicki pride. I'm happy to stand today. Would you stand, please? Because I'm going to stand with you. You got to stand with me. Kubicki came before our committee during a 18-month, very intense, very emotional investigation that Claire McCaskill and I undertook as part of the permanent subcommittee investigations. And she told her story. And Yvonne Ambrose did the same thing in front of the Commerce Committee. Where Senator Blumenthal and I got to hear her incredibly powerful statements about her daughter, 16 years old, as I recall, raped on Christmas Eve 2016 after being on Backpage. And her comment was simply, she never should have been online being sold for sex. She never should have been there. And there was hardly a dry eye in the room. And that's why we're here today with 65 senators. Now, it didn't hurt that a former Olympian and prize-winning filmmaker named Mary Mazzio wrote a little piece that ended up being called I Am Jane Doe. Because that raised awareness. And, you know, I was on CNN this morning talking about this issue. Of course, they wanted to ask me about every other issue except this issue. And I did. I thanked them for them publicizing I Am Jane Doe and what they have done. But, you know, part of this is just people don't know. They really don't know. My constituents don't know. When I'm home and I talk about it, they kind of look at me. That happens in Africa and Asia, right? No, it's happening in your backyard, right here. In Columbus, and Cleveland, and Toledo, and Cincinnati, and in both of the states, Missouri and Connecticut. Every single senator needs to be engaged and involved in this because this is an outrage that is happening in this country, in this century. It's a stain on our national character. We can make a difference here. And your being here today and promoting this specific legislative change will make a huge difference. Now, is it the only answer? No. We've got to continue to raise awareness. We've got to continue. I was on Friday in Columbus, Ohio, and I met with a survivor. And, you know, the connection between opioids and this issue is so strong now. Even if we were successful in wiping Backpage off the internet, it would still be an issue. But listening to experts from all around the country, as Claire and I did in the permanent subcommittee, as Richard and I have at the Commerce Committee hearing, what they say is that this has moved, as victims have told us many times, from the street corner to the smartphone, and that is where you see this explosion, this increase. It's so dramatic. Yeah. We can help there, right, Kubicki? Right, Yvonne? We can help there. Because it's a matter of changing the federal law. So when you're talking to members today, just tell them it's your responsibility to change a federal law that actually provides an immunity to evil websites that sell women and children online without any accountability. That's all we're asking for. We're not trying to take down the freedom of the internet. As I said on the floor this week, Richard and I and Claire have all been talking to us, just the opposite. I think the freedom of the internet is going to be challenged unless we stand up and say these bad actors need to be held accountable, right? Yes. That's all we're talking about. So push back. You know, we've got some folks out there that still are not with us, and they're pretty powerful. You've seen what the House legislation ended up doing, which missed the target. It missed the mark. Would we be happy to have more causes of action and other ways to deal with it? Of course, but that's not the issue here. The issue here is how do you stop this increase we're seeing that all the experts agree with the survivors telling us this is the issue we need to be addressing, and with the need for us to act urgently so that more girls, more women, more innocent people's lives aren't taken down this dark path. And the trauma that results, as I saw with this woman on Friday, and I know the survivors here know what I'm talking about, and those of you who work in this field, she is not only addicted to heroin and opioids and fentanyl, she also has this trauma that is going to be with her the rest of her life. She's going to come out the other end, I'm convinced. She's a brave young woman. But wow, to avoid that for the next generation, for the other girls and women and boys who are out there today, if we can do something, it's our responsibility to do it. Good luck today. Let's get this passed.
My name is Richard Blumenthal. I'm a senator from Connecticut, and I'm very proud to be very proud to be the lead Democratic co-sponsor on this measure. And I want all of the women who participated in the opening, my colleagues missed it, but I'd like all of you to please stand so we can give you another round of applause. Everybody. And I want to be very blunt. I love Rob Portman, but, you know, it's the women who are getting this done in this country. And I want to particularly salute Claire McCaskill, who is a former prosecutor, who has devoted herself tirelessly. But we men have a role too, right? And I want to be bluntly political here. There is nothing partisan about this bill. Those 65 are from both sides of the aisle. They span the ideological spectrum. There is nothing partisan or political. This measure is about saving lives. It is about saving lives. And right now, prostitution is against the law. The act of pimping and sex selling is against the law. But advertising it on the internet, fine. And that is wrong. Now, you heard earlier the reference to this provision of law that provides a shield against legal action for the websites as archaic. Well, it's only about 21 years. For me, that's not exactly archaic. But in the life of the internet, it is archaic, because this provision was designed initially when the internet was in its infancy, when it needed protection against a deluge of lawsuits that people felt might endanger the growth of the internet. Right now, these websites are big, powerful, wealthy, and some of them are resisting this change. And some of them have stopped this measure in the past. And they need to be told the people want this change. They want this measure passed to unlock the courthouse doors. That's what this measure does. Very simply, it gives the survivors their day in court. Yeah. It gives the survivors it gives the survivors something we all take for granted, that when we are wronged, we can go to court and we can hold accountable the person or the corporation or the special interest that has wronged us. And almost uniquely, This provision, 230, bars the courthouse doors. It provides a shield and near absolute immunity to those special interests, the websites that have resisted. Now, I want to say, in deference to them, many have now come over the right side. But we need to make sure that we get the right bill done, not just a bill, but the right bill. The survivors are the ones whose courage has made it possible for us to get this far. The survivors are the ones who are going to be the private attorneys general. They are going to be the warriors in court who will help hold accountable these websites that continue to make vast profits by enabling the sex sellers to profit. And I'll just say one last thing. I got involved in this battle more than a decade ago when I was Attorney General of the state of Connecticut. And we went after MySpace, then we went after Craigslist. There's some folks in this room who may not even remember who they were. And we have fought again and again and again, but we need to bring closure to this battle. We need to win this battle. We need to make it possible for survivors to go to court to win their battles so that they are compensated, not just financially, but morally and emotionally, so that they can win these battles for themselves in a court of law and hold accountable the people who profit from their pain. I am very hopeful that we can do the Senate bill, that we can overcome some of the resistance in the House of Representatives that, again, I'm just being blunt, produced a bill that, in fact, I think is inadequate because it fails to give that right of action to the survivors. It's that blunt. And with your help, we're going to win this battle. And I just want to again thank Senator Portman for his leadership and introduce to you one of the great champions of this cause, my colleague and friend, Claire McCaskill of Missouri.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, first and most importantly, I'm very proud of so many Missourians, but I couldn't be more proud of Kabuki and the journey she's traveled with her daughter. This is not about us. It's about you. It's about a 14-year-old girl that is somewhere along I-44 today having sex at a truck stop, courtesy of their online pimp, facilitated by a website that the law allows to operate with impunity. This is about that 14-year-old girl. And the most important message I want to give you is that righteousness and truth has power. And we're going to get this bill through the Senate. I will tell you that. I am confident we will get this bill through the Senate, right? We will. But here's my challenge to you. As someone who labored in the courtroom for years, holding the hands of survivors, telling them I believe them, fighting my own office to get their cases into the courtroom. This was back in the day where I had to sit in a room with fellow prosecutors and have our boss tell us we couldn't take a rape case to trial because the woman had an IUD in. That somehow that was an invitation to assault. That happened to me as a very young prosecutor, as the only woman assistant prosecutor in the office in Kansas City in the late 70s. This is about intent. As a prosecutor, that is a very, very important key point of the law. And what happened in the House is they gave these guys a pass by putting in the law a level of intent that will be impossible
for victims and survivors and their families to seek justice. We cannot let this sleight of hand that occurred end up in the final bill. And so the real challenge I give to you today is not just to we're down to 35 senators who aren't co-sponsors. Go find them, buttonhole them, and tell them you're not going away, tell them that justice will prevail. But importantly, to all the senators, say you've got to hold the line. We've got to make sure we make the House understand that we will not accept a watered-down version of SESTA. We will not. Allowing someone to take action when one of these websites knowingly allows these advertisements is plenty of protection for anybody who runs online sites. That's plenty of protection, and that's what this bill provides. That we have to prove knowingly, not with intent to do it. That's going to be really, really difficult, guys. So I want you to stay focused on that goal, because I think it's probably the most important challenge we face right now. And finally, I want to thank both Dick Blumenthal, but I really want to thank Rob. He and I began on the journey of trying to get to the bottom of online trafficking back in April of 2015. And we encountered the behemoth known as Backpage. And you know what Backpage thought? That we couldn't reach them. They actually believed that Rob Portman and Claire McCaskill were not going to reach them. That they weren't going to have to appear, they weren't going to have to give documents, that the law protected them so thoroughly that the United States Senate couldn't touch them. And I want you to know, Rob Portman wouldn't give up. I wouldn't give up.
That's for sure.
Our colleagues in the Senate backed us 100%. We made them go all the way to the Supreme Court, and we kicked their ass. So we were able to prove for the very first time that they knowingly were trafficking children on Backpage. Knowingly. They were facilitating it. They were assisting with it. We were able to prove that through our ability to finally hold them accountable, to give us the documentation that investigators, prosecutors, and attorney generals all over the country had been seeking. Now we've opened the door. Together with you, we're going to walk through it into a much brighter day for all of you, all of our families, and most importantly, all of the young women in this country. God bless you all, and let's go get them.
Our next speaker is a real champion on this issue. He's been doing this for a very long time. Kevin Ryan is the CEO of Covenant House and works every single day on behalf of our most vulnerable children, who are most often the targets of this type of exploitation, and specifically online exploitation. So thank you so much, Kevin, for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. Thank you. Thank you. I'm the beggar in chief at Covenant House. That's more like what I really do. And I'm so grateful to be in this movement with you. This Me Too movement is galvanizing the country, but I have to tell you that their faces and their voices might not have been on the front page of Time magazine, but the Me Too movement includes girls and women, many of them homeless, whose sexual exploitation and victimization over many years by older men, whose exploitation flourishes like a cancer, has been possible because power in this country shrugs off harassment and exploitation. It disrespects human life. It commodifies youth. But this movement speaks a new truth. Last year, researchers from Loyola University and the University of Pennsylvania released the largest studies ever on the prevalence of human trafficking among young people who faced homelessness in this country. 911 randomly selected young people who were homeless. 1 in 5 had survived human trafficking. 1 in 5. And the least interesting thing about these kids is that they're homeless. They're students, and they're artists, and they're apprentices, and they're sons and daughters, and they're all brimming with promise and hope. But that darkness looms over them because the sustained unpermitted commercial sexual exploitation of them all loomed large in their lives. And the truth is, many of these young people became victims because they were without shelter, because they were hungry, because their families in some instances had turned them out because of addiction. In some instances, young people were simply primed for the picking by pimps and johns and gangs who use their online conspiracy with website proprietors to just line up a queue of young people for ongoing commercial sexual exploitation. I've come to the Senate today to give Senator Leader Mitch McConnell the names of thousands and thousands and thousands of Americans from coast to coast asking for him to bring this SESTA bill to the floor for a vote now. And there is a new dawn coming. There's a new day coming. But that day is not going to come if we simply sit back, because that sun is being pushed down hard, never to appear on the horizon, by the most lucrative criminal enterprise this organization, this movement has ever confronted, with deep pockets, well-represented, entrenched voices, whispering quite effectively on the House side to gut this legislation. This new dawn, this new day, this horizon, it only breaks with a sun that gets lifted up and pushed forward by the voices of young women, girls, and in some instances, boys and young men who have been exploited online and who know that this country owes them and a generation to come so much more. Let's get this bill done.